Direct News TV. July 14, 2023. Russia-Ukraine updates, Kyiv troops advancing not so quickly. Accused Russian intelligence officer pleads not guilty to U.S. smuggling charges. An alleged Russian intelligence officer has pleaded not guilty to U.S. charges of smuggling U.S.-origin electronics and ammunition to Russia to help its war against Ukraine. Vadim Konaskinok, who was extradited on Thursday from Estonia, entered the plea at a hearing in a federal court in Brooklyn. U.S. Magistrate Judge Ramon Reyes ordered Konaskinok detained pending trial, after prosecutors called him a flight risk. No matter where you are in the world, if you violate U.S. export controls or evade U.S. sanctions, we will not rest until you face justice, Breon Peace, the U.S. attorney in Brooklyn, said in a statement. Blinken pushing for Russia to expand Black Sea grain deal. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is pushing for Russia to extend and expand the Black Sea deal, accusing Russia of using the grain agreement as a weapon by threatening to end it. If Russia is not going to end its horrific war of aggression against Ukraine, at the very least it could extend the Black Sea grain initiative so that these food products can get out to the world, keeping prices down, keeping supply up, Blinken told a news conference in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta. To convince Russia to agree to the deal, a 3-year memorandum of understanding was struck in July 2022 under which UN officials agreed to help Russia get its food and fertilizer exports to foreign markets. While Russian exports of food and fertilizer are not subject to Western sanctions imposed after the invasion of Ukraine, Moscow has said restrictions on payments, logistics and insurance have amounted to a barrier to shipments. German Chancellor defends U.S. decision to supply cluster bombs. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has defended the U.S. decision to supply cluster munitions to Ukraine while at the same time stressing the importance of banning this type of weapon. The U.S. government has made a decision that is not ours but which it made sovereignly, Scholz said at his traditional summer press conference in Berlin. The Chancellor pointed out that the U.S. may otherwise not be able to provide sufficient ammunition to Ukraine. But he added that the International Convention on Cluster Munitions, which Germany signed, is of great importance and expressed concern for the potential impact of unexploded cluster bombs on civilians long after the war is over. The U.S., Ukraine and Russia have not signed the convention, which seeks to outlaw cluster munitions. UN waiting for Russian answer as Black Sea grain deal deadline looms. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is still waiting for a response from Russian President Vladimir Putin on a proposal to extend a deal allowing the safe Black Sea export of Ukraine grain beyond Monday, a UN spokesperson has said. Discussions are being had, WhatsApp messages are being sent, Signal messages are being sent and exchanged. We're also waiting for a response to the letter, UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric told reporters when asked about negotiations. Guterres wrote to Putin on Tuesday asking him to extend the Black Sea deal in return for connecting a subsidiary of Russia's agricultural bank, Roselkazbank, to the international payment system SWIFT, sources told Reuters. Russia has not agreed to register any new ships since June 27 and the initiative will expire on Monday if Moscow does not agree to extend it. Battle for Bakhmut continuing as Ukrainian forces make slow advance. More than 500 days into Russia's invasion, military officials say Ukrainian forces are making slow progress with their counteroffensive on front lines in the east and south. These included gains near the shattered city of Bakhmut, captured by Russian forces in May after months of battles. Ukraine changes Christmas Day in snub to Russia. Ukraine's parliament has voted in favor of changing the date of the Orthodox Christmas holiday from January 7 to December 25. The aim of the bill submitted by Zelensky was the dissociation from the Russian heritage. 2 of Ukraine's 3 large churches with Orthodox status had already decided to change to the Gregorian calendar. Ukraine's largest Ukrainian Orthodox Church with long-time ties to Moscow has yet to comment on the change. Since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, Ukraine has been trying to cut ties to its Soviet and Russian past. The all-out invasion of Ukraine 16 months ago intensified those efforts. Russia exerting maximum efforts to stop Ukrainian soldiers, Zelensky. Zelensky says Ukrainians must understand that Russia is deploying all possible resources to stop Kyiv's forces from advancing in the east and south. We must all understand very clearly, as clearly as possible, that Russian forces in our southern and eastern lands are doing everything they can in order to stop our soldiers, he said in his nightly video address after leading a meeting with top commanders. And every 1,000 meters we advance, every success of every combat brigade, deserves our gratitude, he added. Ukraine says troops advancing not so quickly in east, south. Ukraine has acknowledged its troops are not making speedy headway in their offensive to recapture territory in the east and south of the country from Russian forces. Today it's advancing not so quickly, the head of the presidency, Andriy Yermak, told reporters, conceding that battles were difficult. If we are going to see that something is going wrong, we'll say so. No one is going to embellish, he said. Yermak, who is seen as Zelensky's right-hand man, also insisted Kyiv will not negotiate with Russia until Moscow withdraws its troops from Ukraine. Even thinking about these talks is only possible after Russian troops leave our territory, he said. Foreign Minister Kuleba satisfied with NATO summit despite no invitation to join. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has expressed satisfaction with the results of this week's NATO summit in Vilnius despite Kyiv's failure to secure a hoped-for invitation to formally join the alliance. We have overcome the psychological barrier, and I see that Ukraine is considered a member of NATO in real terms, Kyiv's top diplomat said in an interview on Ukrainian television. Kuleba said it was unfortunate that no quantum leap of NATO membership had been made. But this quantum leap will inevitably come, and it will be much sooner than it seems to us now, he added. According to the diplomat, discussions were ongoing on the wording of a security pact, proclaimed by Western states that is to be in place until NATO membership can be achieved. We interpret it as security guarantees. They interpret it as political commitments in the field of security, he said. U.S. House passes defense bill allocating $300 million to Ukraine. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed legislation that sets policy for the Pentagon, authorizes $886 billion in spending for it in the financial year that begins on October 1 and provides an additional $300 million to support Ukraine as it responds to the Russian invasion. The Senate is expected to pass its own version of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, this month, after which the two chambers will negotiate a compromise on the bill. The NDAA, one of the only major pieces of legislation the U.S. Congress passes annually, determines everything from purchases of ships and aircraft to pay increases for soldiers and how to address geopolitical threats. Kremlin says status of Wagner needs to be reviewed. The Kremlin says the status of the Wagner mercenary group needs to be reviewed. This comes a day after Putin said the group has no legal basis to operate in Russia. EU finance ministers back extra funds for Ukraine. EU finance ministers have unanimously backed extra funds for Ukraine, although differences remain that threaten to delay or block proposed aid to Kyiv. The Spanish presidency is committed to proceed swiftly to have a stable framework in place by January 2024, Spanish Finance Minister Nadia Calvino told a news conference. Calvino added that more technical work would be needed to support Ukraine. The European Commission proposed increasing the bloc's budget until 2027 by €66 billion, $74 billion, €17 billion, $19 billion, of which would be reserved for Ukraine with a further €33 billion, $37 billion, of loans. Alleged Russian spy is extradited from Estonia to U.S. U.S. federal prosecutors say an alleged Russian intelligence operative accused of smuggling U.S.-made electronics and ammunition to Russia to help its war against Ukraine has been extradited from Estonia. The accused, Vadim Konaskinok, is expected to appear in federal court in Brooklyn later in the day. Lavrov was not constructive at ASEAN meeting, U.S. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's interventions at the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, meeting were not constructive or productive on any issue. Blinken, who did not meet Lavrov on the sidelines of the meeting, told reporters that Lavrov was totally negative and focused on blaming the US. Kremlin says it has made no statements on renewing Black Sea grain deal. The Kremlin has not made any statements on the extension of the Black Sea grain export deal, Russia's Interfax news agency quoted Peskov as saying. The spokesman's comment came after reports that Erdogan said he was in agreement with Putin that the deal would be extended. According to the French news agency AFP, the Turkish president told reporters, "We are preparing to welcome Putin in August, and we agree on the extension of the Black Sea grain corridor." My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.